All right, welcome back to KP Ready Unpacked. This is my opportunity to sit down with KP Ready every week and ask him, "Hey, what were you thinking when you posted that on LinkedIn?" My name is Jeff Eccles. I'm a senior advisor here at KP Ready Company, and I'm joined as always by our CEO and founder, KP Ready. Hi, KP.
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
It's going well. It looks like we're both in our normal, quote unquote, normal spots today. So
Yeah.
that'll probably help bandwidth and things like that. But it'll be fun to unpack another one of your LinkedIn posts. And one of the things I would say to people that are listening to this right now, or maybe you're watching the video, we record this live inside of what we call our Catalyst network. It's our online community. So if you want to, when I was a kid in downtown Chicago or even up in the Sears Tower, and I don't care what you think that's called now, it's still the Sears Tower, but there were the radio stations behind glass, right? You could walk up and you could see them recording their radio shows. That's effectively what we're doing here right now on the Catalyst network. You can stare through the glass as KP and I record this, but whether you're watching this or whether you're listening to it on the podcast, if you're not following KP Ready on LinkedIn, you need to be, because a couple of times a day he's reflecting on his travel and on his interactions with students and founders and executives throughout the industry, and those are translated into a couple of posts a day on LinkedIn. So go over to LinkedIn. If you're not following him already, go over to LinkedIn and type in KP space Ready, Reddy, and there's the guy that's on the screen right now. Which, if you're listening to this through your earbuds, you don't see him, but you'll see KP Ready pop up in his Metallica T-shirt, at least as the your avatar is today. He'll pop up, and you can follow him there on LinkedIn and have access to all these posts when they get up there every day. So I know you've had a lot of travel
hmm
recently. So maybe that enters into this discussion today. But the one that we had picked out to talk about was you're sort of differentiating between remote and in person. So let me read it, and then we can unpack what you're talking about here and what you think is important about the post here. So it starts out. KP says remote equals work, in person equals career. I get a ton of work done remotely because people are a huge distraction. I execute on my career in person. I think this pretty much holds true for everyone. This balance truly depends on what you're executing on. So that makes sense to me as I read that out
hmm
loud. I would agree with that. I mean, I would say that's pretty much how I operate my life and career, so to speak. But what was it that inspired you to post this?
Look, I think post pandemic, we all got very comfortable working remotely. I think unless you're a retail operation, your customers don't actually come to you. You kind of go to them,
True, true.
right? Um, and so I think some of this was sparred by some conversations I was having with some mid career people when I was out and about, basically saying, hey, the job market has changed. Um, in every industry, right? So the wages aren't where they are. The hiring cycles are very different. Pay scales are starting to shift, which is tough with inflationary pressures that people are either going to have flat or make less money in the same role that they were in last year. So there's a lot of those dynamics, but the key differentiator was talking to some of these folks saying like, hey, like I'm going into the office. I don't have to go into the office, but I'm realizing the more time I spend with my boss, with my boss's peers, the better equipped, one, I'm learning more, but I'm also getting access to the best projects, to the best opportunities versus the person that's sitting at home. And I think as you think about career, are you an individual contributor? Are you a leader? Like, what is your path? And maybe an individual contributor sitting at their home producing a lot of great work. That's great if that's what you're if that's your aspiration, right? Maybe you don't need to be around people. But I would say for a lot of people that are trying to make their way, especially like in a startup environment, you know, we're remote because we live in cities, different cities, right? But last week we got together because we're at a conference.
Right.
And I think we do tend to spend, you guys hear from me 3, 4 times a day. It's not like
Right.
it's not like I let you get work done. Um, and so I think that engagement is really important depending on what kind of career you're crafting. And I think if you're early career, you have to be in the office. Like I don't know a way to not be in the office to really know what's going on, right? I think and to learn and to build relationships. But I was talking to a really large real estate company based in New York, and they had a 10 or 20% layoff. The people that got laid off was direct. It wasn't even close. It wasn't like, oh, it's kind of close or it's a pattern. In a binary fashion, if you were in the office, you didn't get laid off.
Mm.
100%. Now, there were some people that got laid off that came to the office, but 100% of the remote workers got laid off.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you ask, like, well, why'd they get laid off? It's like, because there was no personal, I don't know, Steve. I haven't seen Steve in a year. Put him on the list. Oh,
Yeah.
Joe, I've had lunch with Joe 3 times a week. I don't want to, he's doing a great job. Joe's doing a great job. I have lunch with him 3 times a week. And that was the pattern, right? So I think, so that's a very binary view like, oh, I'm an individual contributor and this is just about work. So I'm doing remote work, or I'm a high potential career driven person and now I'm 100% in the office. But I think for most people, there's an in between space.
Mm-hmm.
And that is you actually have to get work done, right? You have to get work. We all have to do deliverable work. And when we have to do deliverable work, it's probably best we be left alone to do it.
Right. Right.
And it's interesting because I've been really analyzing it for my own self, right? I'm always trying to hack the next level of efficiency. Not that I end up working any less. I probably work the same. It's just more about throughput for me.
Mm.
And one of the changes I've made is really I have a really good desktop with 4 monitors. Like I've got a setup at home. And then I'm switching off of having a laptop to having an iPad from when I'm out and about.
Mm.
And the idea there being is when I am home at my desktop, that's when I schedule my deliverable work. When I'm out and about, I'm not going to let deliverable work get in the way of me being present and engaged within the market, within whatever it is I'm doing, right? The last thing I should do is go to a conference where I'm speaking, give a talk, go sit at the desk, go sit at a table, and bust out my laptop. That's not
Right.
what I'm there for, right? I'm there
Right.
to meet with people and engage with people. Um, and so, really starting to kind of create both physical spaces and work blocks that are very intentional. This is
Mm-hmm.
about me getting my work done, and this is about me growing, expanding my growth, and really blocking out time to understand, to help myself better understand, like how do I spend my time both in person and at remotely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that idea of intentionality and presence, right? That's huge. Those are life lessons right there, life skills, life tools. Let me ask you about maybe some, these are some what ifs maybe. Um, Thinking about like our mastermind groups, we've been talking about mastermind groups a
Mhm,
lot in the shop, basically. Um, the way our mastermind groups work, they're virtual
mhm,
twice a month, but then once a quarter they meet in person. So it sort of blurs the line a little bit between what you're saying or around what you're saying. But I wonder if in the scenario of a mastermind group, and so you and I sat in on
mhm,
two of them yesterday, and over the course of those conversations with uh, a dozen, 18 or so people yesterday that span from the East Coast to the West Coast of North America.
mhm,
Those were virtual, right? Those were remote, so to speak, but in a way, they feel like these in-person connections because we're having not one-on-one, although some of them did end up in one-on-one
Mhm.
conversations, but they're more connected conversations. Is there an exception to the rule in those types of cases, or is that a third category or something?
Yeah, so I don't think it's a category, right? I think you can have remote. So if you think about community building, right, which is a lot of what we
Hmm.
do, right?
Right.
It's what I've
Right.
devoted. I don't know how many hours a week to is building community.
Hmm.
You can build community. The key to building a great community is creating shared experiences.
Right.
You can do it well remotely. You can also do it poorly in person,
Sure.
right? So I don't know that I would categorize. I've seen some really effective um, remote shared experience things.
Hmm.
I think we all kind of went through different cycles during the pandemic. I mean, I had a group of leaders that we were playing online trivia together, right? And nothing better than competing with each other to build shared experiences, right?
Yeah.
That's why we have corporate softball teams and things like that, right? It's about creating competitive shared experiences are very valuable, right? But at the same time, you can have an in-person experience that nobody's talking to anybody, right? Everybody's just
Right.
like there are no shared experiences. So I think um, what I wouldn't create a third category, but I think there's a way to
Mm.
do both really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think you have to be, you have to be somewhat. You're an architect. You have to be a great designer, right? And I think if you think about in person, how you design an experience, like how we design
Mm.
Summit, it's very intentional. We design it very intentionally so that people walk away with, wow, this is what I got out of that. And if
Right.
all people walk away from Summit and they say, oh, I met some great people, I'm like, oh, so what? Like, you meet a
Yeah.
lot of great people. You're getting ready to go to AIA. Like, you'll meet a great people. Like, that's a big so
Hmm.
what. If they don't walk away and they're like, man, that session on whatever, phew, wow, blew me away. Like, if they don't have those kind of experiences that they walk away from, then we haven't done our job. And I think same thing goes for mastermind groups or anything, right? I think even thinking about how you engage with your boss, right? How you engage with your boss is an experience that you can design as an employee,
Mm.
so that maybe you're doing a remote check-in on things, and how this is how I look at things sometimes is you can either send your boss a report ahead of time for a check-in meeting about what you've accomplished and then have a conversation about it, or you can walk them through a deck about here's where we're at,
Hmm.
and you've left no room for any kind of shared experience,
Mm.
right? the,
Interesting. Yeah.
the, the idea of like chit chat. Hey, did you check? If your boss is from Kansas City, hey, did you see what the punter for Kansas City did? Right? Like, boom, right? Like, your boss is no longer looking at their phone while on a Zoom call with you. They pick up, like, oh, yeah, oh my God, man. Like, what? Right? Like, whatever it is, right? And so I think, like, the discipline of, like, kind of ice breaking and, your boss should hang up from a Zoom call with you, not just feeling fulfilled that they got the information they need. But like, man, that dude's great. Like, I like that
Yeah.
guy, right? I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that guy. He's an up and comer. Like, if you think about it, I work with these multi-billion-dollar organizations, and they talk about someone being tapped as being a high potential
Mm.
employee, right? An HPE or an HPT, high performance talent, and they label these people in organizations in multi-billion-dollar companies. A lot less so in 10-person companies. And when you ask the executives, like, why is that person? I've asked this question: why is that person a high potential talent? And they're like, oh, I mean, person's fantastic, and they've hit their numbers, and and I'm like, no one else hit their numbers. Oh, I mean, yeah, 1,000 people hit their numbers. Okay, so what's the differentiate? And you
Hmm.
quickly find out that it's a lot less factual. A lot of people put up numbers, right? A lot of
Right.
people do
Right.
that. what you start figuring out is that it's really these intangibles around their
Hmm.
personality and how they approach people and what other people say about that person. Oh, that man, he's so smart. Well, did you test his IQ? Is he smarter than the 10 other people in his cohort? Probably not, right? So there's this layer of feelings that gets wrapped around facts that determines who a high potential talent is in an organization. And you're finding that the people that do that really well are the ones that are excelling. And you can sit there and, but I do great work just because I don't play golf with the boss. I didn't get the promotion. It's like, what you're saying is there is a predictable outcome for your career path.
If you play golf.
This is not an enigma, right? This is like, I don't know how they got there. Oh, they play golf with the boss twice a month. Guess what? Play golf with the boss twice a month. like
Yeah.
the formula is in front of you, right? It's not like some
Hmm.
big secret.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's the level of engagement. What you're talking about. Part of what you're talking about is feelings, right? Oh, I feel like this person is a great guy, or is
Mhm.
whatever, and that comes from playing golf with the boss twice a month, or whatever it is. But it's a level of engagement that drives those feelings. And you mentioned Summit, and without trying to seem too self-serving, I mean, the way that our summit is designed, which is, if you need to know more about that, of course, just go to kpready.co, or actually the summit website is up now. We'll pull the URL for that. aecsummit.co, I believe, is the URL for that. But you said it's intentionally designed, and it is intentionally designed. I'm going, as you mentioned, to AIA National here in a week as we record this, and it's intentionally designed. It's intentionally designed so that you spend several days sitting in chairs listening to people talk. What's going to be the takeaway from that? Well, I'm going to get some learning units. Um, I'm going to hopefully hear some great speakers. Maybe I'll get some things to talk or think about. Maybe I'll derive something from these talks that I sit and listen to. And of course, then there's always the value is in the corridors, the networking
Mhm.
in the corridors. But the differentiator for Summit is that the entire thing is designed around me having conversations with other people on these topics, where together we're engaging to come up with ideas and solutions to these things that we're talking about. That's vastly different. And obviously, what we're betting on, the reason we're doing this so intentionally, is that will be more engaging, it'll have a better impact, and there'll be a feeling of accomplishment. One, well, I feel like we accomplished something. I sat there and I talked with 8 other people at this table, and I got to know them, and we solved some problems together, like playing trivia or whatever. So that intentionality around the way that things are designed so that they're next level engaging, and they drive those feelings. I mean, we're getting into some psychology there and such, but I what you're saying, um, we see this all the time, and it does come back to how are we designing this to be
Mhm.
engaging, to drive these feelings that are going to accelerate,
Mhm.
fill in the blank, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Whatever it is that our goal, the goal that we're trying to accomplish.
No, it's super interesting. Before the pandemic, which I'm kicking them back up now, I would host these private dinners, like super exclusive. People flew in for my dinners. I would have a special, like James Beard chef type of deal. Like it was like very high end. 10 people at the table, and I did this wild thing. Have you seen there's this thing that psychologists use? It's like a color wheel of emotions.
Hmm.
I would look at that and say, what feelings do I want people to have during this dinner?
Okay.
And you can't just say happy, sad, fun. Like those aren't feelings, right? Or
Right.
they're too broad. So I would pick 3 or 4 off the emotional wheel and say, for this event, here's what I want people to feel. And everything I designed around it in
Mhm.
detail was around that feel, right? And lots of fun things. Like sometimes I'd put little I'd have puzzles out on the dinner table, like whatever it was, the selection of wine, like everything. There's lots of good wines out there, but I would care about the name of the
Mm.
wines and the story of the wine so that it lined up with the feelings I wanted.
Yeah.
So highly orchestrated, designed. And a friend of mine was like, dude, why are you like hacking people? And I'm like, I'm not hacking people. I'm trying to bring them joy.
Mhm.
Right. Fundamentally, I'm trying to, and joy takes lots of forms, right? Sometimes people are joyful because they feel intellectually inspired because, whatever it is. And I don't think, there's a little bit of like the psychology of things and hacking people. But if your outcome is not nefarious, right? Hey, I just want people to have a great time. I want them to feel this. I want them to feel that. And they can walk away saying that, man, your dinner was fantastic. I felt X and it lines
Mhm.
up with what you were trying to achieve. Then they want to keep doing it. I probably have 50 or 100 requests right now to kick off my dinners again. I'm like, I don't have time, y'all. And they're like, what do you mean? Just set up an Eventbrite. And I'm like, you don't know what I do behind the scenes. Like
Yeah.
the preparation that goes into this stuff to create a great experience, because money aside, most of these people, money is not the driver. It's their time.
Mhm.
Like I had
Well,
one friend flying on his private jet. Like that's expense and time, right? Away from his
mhm.
family to come hang out with one of my dinners.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah, I mean
interesting because one of the people that came to my dinners, he said, I loved your dinner idea. I started throwing my own dinners in New York City. I'm like, how are they going? He's like, they're not going as well.
mhm.
And I'm like, well, what do you think? Like, what did you do? He's like, oh, I got a great chef. I got a great space. I got great. So he followed the tactical playbook of what
Mhm.
I did. And I was like, happy to, I was like, yeah, but you didn't design it.
Yeah.
Great scotch, check. Great food, check. Great menu, check. Did all those things, hit the checklist. I was like, but what were you trying to emote?
Yep.
And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, you think I just put together a great menu and buy great booze? Like, is that what you think I do? And so I think we can be more deliberate and intentional
Mhm.
as a remote worker. I mean, take 10 seconds longer to write a better Slack message, right? Because guess what? That's maybe how your team is, or maybe that's how your team is viewing you. Like you're
Yeah.
only as good as your last Slack message. So maybe add a couple sentences with an intention to emote something from the readers, from the people that read your
Yeah.
Slack message.
Yeah. It comes down to perception, right? I mean, what you were just talking about, I know we don't have time to go down that rabbit hole, but you're basically talking about high level UX, right? User experience in the real world for your dinners. Um,
Mhm.
perception's everything. Perception's reality. And so if it's you're being intentional and you're designing this, whether it's your Slack message or it's your special dinner or whatever it is, it makes a big difference.
I agree.
The LinkedIn posts that we've been talking about from KP Reddy's LinkedIn profile. Again, if you're not following him, go to LinkedIn and type in KP space Reddy, Reddy, and follow KP there. He posts a couple times a day. This one reads, and as we're recording this on May 29th, it looks like if you scroll back to about May 28th, you'll find this post on KP's LinkedIn profile. It says, remote equals work, in person equals career. I get a ton of work done remotely because people are a huge distraction. I execute on my career in person. I think this pretty much holds true for everyone. This balance truly depends on what you are executing on. So, KP, thanks again for joining me today and unpacking this post. It's always fun to see what's behind the scene. What's the inspiration for these posts, and they're thought provoking. Sometimes they're stirring the pot. Always informative, and I think this one is good advice for people wherever they are in their career. So appreciate the opportunity to sit down and unpack this. And I'll see you and I'll see everybody else again next week.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.